I said yes only because of my personal connections to this school. One is your president, Sandy Unger, who I worked closely with at Yara years ago, who, as many of you know, has a special gift for convincing people to do things they do not necessarily want to do. Which worked out great in this case because I have a special gift for saying yes to people like that. As was said, another personal connection I have to Goucher is my grandma Frida, is my dad's mom, Frida Friedlander, Goucher class of 31. A very defiantly proud Goucher grad. Are there members of Phi Beta Kappa here? Can I hear Phi Beta Kappa? You are my grandma's sister in that organization. I'm wearing her Phi Beta Kappa. Grandma Frida wore her key to any special dinner or occasion until she died and was not shy about talking about being a member of Phi Beta Kappa with anyone who would listen, which makes her seem like some wacky grandma. But she was actually amazing, but she was smart and funny and awake to the world. And I will turn out that although I oppose the form of graduation speech, I stand because I know it would please her a great deal. My third connection to Goucher, I really was not going to talk about at all, and this week my wife and some friends insisted that you graduates find it relevant, and that is that I lost my virginity in one of the dorms here. She made this happen. I was not the instigator. I hit some problems the other day, but I was kind of immature and scared. She, however, was used to transcending boundaries. Although I oppose the idea of commencement address, I think about what would have been useful to me to hear on the day I left college, and I wish that somebody had said to me that it's normal to feel lost for a little while. You know, you get out of school and you have this great and very expensive education, and you are a rocket ready to launch, and it is not clear where you should be pointed or even how to get off the ground. And what you're supposed to exactly do to make this big, incredible life that now you're supposedly trained to create. Like you're supposed to be like, okay, let's go. What do you do? I think was as ambitious as any of you in this class. I was working at a network news show at all things considered at the age of 20, and I floundered badly. I had one skill as a person in my 20s, and that is that just for whatever reason, I was a good editor. I was a very decent editor from the start. But all the other things that make me decent at my job now, how to make a story, how to structure a story, how to find a story, how to report. I was a terrible writer. I was the kind of writer who writes a paragraph and then looks at it and thinks like, oh no, I'm going to move all the words around, and then rewrites it over and over again. I spent years in my 20s doing mediocre stories that should have taken days, but in fact took me months. I spent years wondering if I should just learn to become a journalist by going to journalism school, by going to grad school. Instead, and this is just a little practical tip, I simply decided, this is totally, I don't know why people don't talk about this, I simply would take NPR reporters and pay them $50 to look at scripts I was working on, which was much cheaper than grad school. And as a performer on the air, I was a complete stiff, and I want to say that this is not some sort of weird, false modesty, like I was bad. There's proof of this in the internet. Google, and you'll see it. I made very little money. My personal financial goal was your age times 1,000, which I did not achieve until I was into my 30s. Many years I made $12,000 to $18,000. I would say it was very sobering for me to read in the New York Times last week. They had this series on college debt. that people get out of college with $900 a month in student loans that they have to pay. That was my entire income some years. And my parents, throughout my 20s when I was working in public radio, they completely opposed everything that I was doing working in public broadcasting. Somehow, my parents are the only Jews in America who do not listen to public radio. They thought that I should be a doctor. I was a pre-med student, and one of the things, their idea for my life was to have some kids, live here in the Baltimore suburbs where I grew up, like your parents' kids. I hope this is not embarrassing to say that I had my own national radio show. I had been on David Letterman, and there had been a New York Times Magazine article about me before they stopped suggesting medical school was still an option. And to their great credit, they changed. I think one of the most difficult things for any parent is to readjust their idea of what their kids should be to what kids want to be. And I think when you're the kid in that situation, it's really easy to be glib and want your parents to just catch up to who you're turning yourself into. And in my case, my parents, they were worried about money. My parents both grew up in really, really poor households, really financially insecure. They saw that I was making no money, and it just pushed all the buttons, and they really worried. And when I was in my 20s, things were said between us that my mom passed away a few years ago of cancer, and there are things that I said in my 20s. I mean, we made up well before that, but there are things that I said to her and to both my parents in my 20s that I still regret as we thought over what I was doing. And I would just say to you guys, as your parents catch up to you, I feel like my parents caught up with as much grace as anybody could. As your parents catch up to you, don't be a dick. There's a show on HBO that I admire a lot called Girls. It's about what it's like in the years after college when you're trying to make a way for yourself. It's about what you guys are about to launch yourself into. And every single fact in that show is completely different from my life when I was in my 20s, but the essence of that show feels exactly the same. What's great about this show is it is a completely unromantic view of what your life is about to be. The young women on that show, they flounder, they pretend to know what they're doing when they absolutely don't. They strongly believe things that are transparently untrue. I myself spent years in a terrible kind of politically correct phase where I traveled to Nicaragua and called it Nicaragua to observe the 70s revolution firsthand. You will be stupid. You will worry your parents as I worry mine. You will question your own choices. You will question your relationships, your jobs, your friends, where you live, what you studied in college, that you went to college at all. And the thing I want to say is that is totally okay. That is totally normal. If that happens, you're doing it right. And you're in school, you're on a path, and there are signposts, there are goals, and they give you grades, which is, in retrospect, an insanely wonderful thing that people are constantly grading you and telling you, you did well, you did bad, you did well. And now you're going to join the confusing mess of life with me and your parents and the rest of us that we've been living in for years ahead of you, where it is not clear at all how to evaluate anything you're doing or how you're going to spend the rest of this time on this earth. Welcome. And the good news is that you can will things into existence. Like, I was not a very good writer, and I just willed it to happen by trying. And you leave this school as well armed for battle as anyone is. Like you're doing as well as anybody. And in my case, basically you just have to make up what you're going to be. Like, I just would work and made up a little series that I would produce on Morning Edition, and I learned, I wish somebody told me this, that if you're doing any kind of creative work, like sometimes I got like ideas, like what would your work be about? And I just assumed like it like sprinkled on you like fairy dust, like I had to learn that like ideas, if you're going to make creative work, like you have to find an idea to make the work about, and that is a job in itself. And where do ideas come from? They come from other ideas. You have to surround yourself with things that are interesting to you, and notice what is exciting to you and what you want to dive into, and finding what you're going to make your short story or film or song or art project or movie about is a job. Finding what you want to do next is a job, it's a task. You have to set aside hours of the day, and you have to be a soldier, and you have to fight for what you're going to make in yourself. And yeah. And you cannot tell where things would lead. My grandma Frida, after she got out of Goucher, her life took some really, really rough turns. She graduated in 1931 during a slight economic turn down that you may have heard of. She divorced soon after having 2 children. She was a single mom through the Depression and afterwards. Back when she was a teenager here in Baltimore, to treat her acne, she had bad acne, to treat it, they had this brand new, amazing technology called X-rays that they would expose your skin to at high doses to clear up her skin. Only years later did they realize that higher doses of radiation like that would give you skin cancer, which kicked in when she was 32, and they had to remove all the skin from her face and graft on skin from elsewhere on her body, which took over 40 separate operations. She was the first one on either side of my family to have gone to college, but ended up taking over the family business, which is this little corner grocery down on Bayard Street downtown, basically a Jewish bodega that the family lived upstairs from, where my dad and my uncle also were. And she talked about Goucher so fondly as she got older because I think she was happy here. It was a really happy time of her life. My dad and uncle both told me this week that after Goucher, things got a lot harder for her. Eventually, she did the job that she trained for at Goucher, which was to be a teacher. In her files for Goucher, there's evaluations from classes that she took. There's one dated April 1931. Ms. Green-Dunberger's promise of becoming a very successful teacher. She has a sense of social responsibility, pleasing personality, an excellent and well-trained mind. Her teaching practice meant, quote, great success, making unusual, varied, interesting and well-organized lessons plans, presenting her material with force and vigor, clinching her points in a most experienced manner. Eventually she taught French in the public high schools here in Baltimore, in the city, a high school that confusingly is called City College. And the parents was very good at it. A writer named Dwayne Wickham wrote a memoir of growing up in Baltimore and struggling through school, and they were dropping out, and he names her as one of the few teachers who tried to rescue him as he struggled through high school, just as her teachers at Goucher predicted. I'm going to close with a story that seems crazy, but I remember telling this story and my dad insists that it's true. It's about the day that Grandma Frida, Goucher grad, Baltimore girl, met Adolf Hitler. She was married in June 1932, and there was enough money from the corner store at that point to honeymoon in Europe. In Germany, she and my grandfather would go away getting a tour of some government building. I was always told by the Reich that it was the Reichstag building, which burned down a year later. And they were led to a room, they're getting like a group of tourists, and they led to these various rooms, and they walk into a room. And the tour guide says, oh, this is Hitler, who's trying to become our new chancellor. And my grandma Frida would describe this short little man, unimpressive little man, and he nods at the foreign tourists, and they kind of nod at him, and then move on to the next room. And years later, my grandma would just sit in her high school classroom at City College. She would tell this story, and the response was always the same from the students. They would always say the same thing. They would raise their hands and go, "Why did you kill him?" And she said, if I had known what he was going to do, it was 1932. And right there is the problem. We don't know. We lurch forward in our lives, we try this, we try that, we make the best guesses that we can based on what we believe at the time, and it is entirely possible that a Goucher grad, that you will get a chance to change the world and kill Adolf Hitler. You won't miss it. That is entirely possible. But I have to say, I talked to a lot of you last night, and I believe in you. I think think it's just as likely that you will continue to grow and build muscle, which is your next task, and continue to make yourselves into who it is that you're trying to be. And when you get your chance to remake the world, when you get the chance to change everything for yourself and hopefully for others too, when you get your chance to shoot Adolf Hitler, you will know what to do.